Welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. My name is Michael Kobas, and joining me is Alice Lesnick, and she's going to speak about her show that's on display, Cerulean Collective Exhibition. She's titled it Safe as Houses, and it's here September 13th to October 8th. Hello, Alice.
Hi, Mike, and hi, Tina, too.
So how
Good
are you?
evening. I'm good. How are you today?
Good. Well, the show looks great. Where did the title Safe as Houses come from?
Thanks. The title Safest Houses sort of popped into my head. Um, when after a while I decided to sort of go with this emergence of a sort of traditional emblem of a house, a little triangular roof and a square underneath. And I hear safe as houses very much with tongue in cheek. And I hear it also like with a raised eyebrow and really as a question, like, So I think the original slogan was maybe having to do with investment in the British Empire. It was a British term for what made a safe investment. That's
I see.
I I looked it up after I got interested in it because, and then I thought, oh, this really kind of calls in what I feel and am curious about, which is, what is safe and are houses safe and by what measure? Is something like capitalist or corporate investment the measure to take, or something closer to the bone? And there's so many ideas and wishes and dreams about house and home, location and security. So that's what I'm really, what I realized I wanted to explore with these paintings.
So did it come about like as you were painting? Like did the form emerge?
The form of the house.
Yes.
Yes. And it's been recurring for several years now. And then recently it started coming through again. So I went back and looked at some older paintings where that form comes through, and a couple times I sort of intended it. And so as I would intend to play with that form or um, sort of do a call and response with it, some variations came through. So there was kind of a very interesting, to me, interplay between what was happening and then how it might inform my next intention.
Because the three on this wall look very calligraphic
Yeah.
and, very simple, like almost like writing.
Yeah. It's true. They look kind of like Chinese characters or
Right.
something like that. Um, and they also, to me, look a little bit like houses and
Right.
also bodies.
Yes.
So that figures. So yeah, a couple things that I could say about it. I don't think I'm saying this as I'm painting, but
Hmm.
a takeoff point for words. One would be, yeah, I'm really interested in um, the writing piece, sort of in terms of codes, like what has been encoded about house and home, where we live. What are our codes for that? What are our myths for that? Um, could they be otherwise? Should they be otherwise? Yeah. And then also, where do we actually live? Is it true that sort of like I live in my house or my abode or in my body? Or are these locations, somewhat more up for question?
So can you talk like a little bit how you approach them as paintings? I mean, do you have a idea or any drawing, or do you just start painting, or how do you do it?
Yeah, it varies. Like with those, the ones that look like calligraphy, I did do some drawings first. I didn't think, oh, first I'll draw it and then I'll paint it. It was more like, first I'll do it as immediately as I can. And then I'll take that into a somewhat, still pretty immediate, but more planful approach. But then like with these, I start painting, especially in the first of this series, there's some kind of problem then that shines back at me, like something's out of balance or a part is too heavy or it's bothersome in some way. So then it becomes, I hate puzzles, Mike, in real life. Like I hate puzzles, but in painting, I love a puzzle.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And this one that we're looking at now, it's a little bit different. The structure of it.
Yeah. So this one kind of came about with a couple more that we'll see when we come around to the next wall, I think. But yeah, I think this one, so like I started with that, again, that really traditional, like hyper conventional, like childlike image of the house frame. And then I don't remember what I did, but it got me quickly into trouble. I was like, oh, okay, now I'm in this trouble. How will I get out of it? And then the way I get out of it is I realize like I can't be timid in getting out of it, even though I'm in trouble in terms of sort of like the design of the painting. I have to move with a kind of vigor. The paint has to move. It can't be inchy and maybe, and oh, there's trouble. So now let's see if we can fix it. So I have to come into the trouble sort of boldly.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how this grew. And then once I get onto another perch from that, then I can
assess
and and then I can, in a way, step back from the edge a bit. Yeah.
And this particular form appears several times. This house shape.
Yeah, a friend at the show said that this one reminded her of a tent, which I was happy of because, yeah, like the idea of dwellings or places where we dwell for a while, temporarily or precariously, is also really of interest to me. But yeah, these, I feel like, take that iconic house form and really question it. Like, is it turning into a house? Is it turning out of a house? And there's something about playing with scale that gives me a lot of joy and interest, like what's big and what's small, which is like, to me, a big question. On and off the canvas. Yeah.
I mean, they have sort of a movement to them, like they're a living thing. Like they're sort of shifting from side to side, you know, like shrugging or
or maybe like this is a moment of them, but they're on their way to being something else or to almost like one of those, well, a little bit like when you look through a kind of a low-tech kaleidoscope and you can kind of see the different sections kind of jostling to come into their next form. Yeah.
So can you talk about how you use color? Because your color is very vibrant, a lot of contrast, bright colors, and then darks as well.
Yeah. I can try. It's totally intuitive. Like I just mix it until I like it. And it's fairly organic, and it's not systematic, I guess I would say. But it's really purposeful. So yeah, I think I'm going by feel and sort of like, I guess I'd say like from the inside out. Yeah, and I guess
I mean, they're not muted colors.
okay.
They're pretty, forthright.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. Um, yeah, it's true. I think that's because in painting, I want to work as close to the bone as I can. And maybe also because in life, I'm aiming to be direct and honest and clear. Not to say muted colors aren't clear. Maybe it's because like there is a kind of I think I'm reacting to and exploring a kind of intensity, like emotional intensity and intensity of what's happening in our world and stories of our world, and maybe the vivid color comes with that.
So speaking of story, this horizontal painting has like a narrative quality to it almost. Was that something you were aiming for?
I mean, it's interesting, Mike. Like, I when I first decided to put this group of paintings together in this show, I thought of this one as sort of the seed of the others. So in that way, it has that narrative to it. It's not actually the first painting I made with the cutouts, the cardboard cutouts of the house form, but it seems to have, it seems to tell some kind of story of, pretty extreme dislocation and uncertainty and disruption, but at the same time to suggest that the possibility that things still hold or are held, but maybe a bit off screen.
So I think just the format, it gives it a sequential quality. Like it can be read like from left to right.
What do you see there?
Well, it's the houses become like characters in your play here. And, it's either looking at different progress of them or just different situations for, whether it's a sequence in time or memory or, it just has a bit of, it's a different quality than the ones that have a single object in them.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, one thing I guess what you're saying makes me think is that the safest houses idea, it doesn't just pertain to one's own dwelling, whether it's a house or an apartment or a yurt or wherever, but it also pertains to, like, importantly, those around, like neighbors. I'm really interested in the notion of neighbors, like what makes a neighbor, and it's deep, and more broadly. So it's like what a house means, it means to me, and it has a cultural meaning as well that sort of puts me inside its house. So that idea that they're different characters, and it's true, like I do feel like the house where I live sort of become a character in our family.
Right. A living thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is quite different from the others. Can you talk about this one?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. Yeah, this one is a bit older than some of the others we were looking at. You see a different style of that house form. But here, and there's also a play with house and human figure and dancing, which is something I love and which is something I'm interested in. Also paint, movement. There's a quality of dance in painting. And there's quality of dance and movement and sort of grounding to the floor and beneath in the what seems in those structures that come up. And then I started exploring how the whole thing could also look like a head in profile. And like, so again, it sort of raises this question of sort of like, what are we in? Are we in our heads? Are our heads in something else? So it spins that boundary between subject and object that I'm interested in. And then one more thing I'll say is, like, I was a theater nerd, I guess. And so the theater as a house, the house lights, that's where the title came from. So I do think there's something of theater in this, or circus. And that's a kind of line in some of my other painting. Plays and players who aren't in their actual house. They're in kind of a fake house.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is called Transit.
Yeah, like also a sense of a journey, like a road, or maybe a couple of roads or a few roads, and a sense to me of like, it might be okay, it might be quite challenging, the situation here, an ambiguous kind of situation in terms of how risky it is to make this transit sort of across houses that I don't know, I guess I often have a question of well, it's sort of like a deep question too about like privacy, like what happens behind closed doors / isolation.
Well, the dark ground gives it a somewhat foreboding quality.
Yeah. Yeah. And like maybe it wants more regulation and order than it can have.
Right. Well, we're always looking for, to control our environment.
Yeah.
I think sometimes.
Yeah.
And you work with acrylic? Is it exclusively acrylic?
This show is exclusively acrylic with some cardboard and a little fabric.
And do you treat, I mean, are these like, do you finish these in one session, or do you come back to them, or what's your process?
It totally varies. Sometimes I come back to them in the same segment of days, sometimes years later. And I sort of have a sense like, that's just not finished. But it takes a while to know how to move next with it. This is an older painting than most of them. There's some mica there too. And and this one was otherwise for quite a while before it took this nature as what I call family house. So yeah. And sometimes I paint them quickly. Like I would say those ones that you said seemed like they might be kind of alive. The first of those took a bit, but then I sort of developed a little interest in making one of those sort of as a method. So I said, let's see if I can do it again. It was really fun to do a few like that.
So here the shape is very black in this like lighter field. So it has a different quality than some of the other more colorful ones. Was that intentional, or how did it come about?
Yeah. In the sense of intentional, that kind of like as and after it happened, then I chose it and worked further into it. Yes. In the sense of planning it ahead of time and then doing it, no, not. So I guess two different ideas of intentional. But yeah, this painting also was done earlier, like that other family house one, than most of the others. And I think this one too is sort of an origin story for me. Like my own interest in this topic is somehow tracks as well to the challenges and terrors of my own childhood house. And I think this helps me kind of like explore that and share it without controlling it, but make more space for that as a part of what I've learned.
I see. And then these are very minimal.
Yeah. And here I think there's a sort of direct inquiry about house as body, and sort of what a structure is, what holds it up. In Qigong, which is a movement form and philosophy form I'm really interested in, there's like a basic teaching that what holds us up in our bodies is our bones, not our muscles, even though a lot of our sort of contemporary approaches to exercise tend to focus on the muscles. So it's kind of about the bones of things. Yeah.
And is that similar in this one?
Well, this one is more about, like, I think, well, if I had to say, it's more about bringing the organic closer in. So this is more, the first one is more about sort of the bones and the structure, and this one's more about the heart, the soft tissue of it, blood and guts. Yeah.
Well, and you got that bit of red in this.
Yeah, there and up at the top. Yeah. So I don't know, to me, it gives a sense of the kind of the reality that we're living, that, whatever we're talking about this or that theory or theme, it's in the course of our lives, and not something bloodless. Yeah.
Right. So how does it feel to see them presented here together as opposed to making them one by one in your studio?
Well, I'm really happy you asked me this, Mike, because I really want to say it feels great. And that is owing to the skill and vision of the installation. Excuse me, there's the dog. I have to pause 1 sec.
Okay.
Excuse me.
The dog's there. She has to take him out. So she's gone.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
Yeah, what I was saying.
We'll chop that out so we'll edit that bit.
That's great. Yeah, so I was going to kind of start over.
Yes.
That part, because this is really important. Because the way you and Tina installed the show and installed this show with so much sensitivity and like creativity, it really re-gives the paintings to me, so that there's like a surprise in how you've done it. And I think it's brilliant that you don't show your hand beforehand. And it's not often the way I would have done it necessarily. And it's so brilliant. And it sets up these consonances and correspondences and dialogues that are really great to listen in on. And that's the feeling I have. I'm sort of getting to listen in on these like new harmonies and questions. And it did give me the sense of what a show is, as distinct from some paintings on the wall.
Right.
And I really appreciate that.
It's like a body of work.
It's like a body. Yes. And the whole is quite another thing than the sum of the parts.
Right. Well, I think you can see, I mean, sometimes when you're making things, individually, you don't see it. Then at the end, when you see a group of works, yeah, you might have a better understanding of like where you're coming from.
Oh, it's such a gift. Yes, that understanding. And then I'm so curious where I'll take this new understanding next in my painting. Like, oh, will I want to continue in this, set of harmonies and dissonances, or will I continue by going otherwise,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives you sort of a resting point to, assess this and then plan what comes next.
It's true.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Alice.
Thank you too.
It's a great show. And like I said, it's up through October 8th, so we hope people can come down and see it. And thanks again, and we'll end here.
Thank you so much, Mike.